Jaji.
Hi.
Dwi'n naw le ka.
At your call up to here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A die.
Ai ngai, tunga suwitsi, taku chone alang migata, taku kinaikut. Uvanga, ulipa. Ulumi taku chau kailanga junga, taku nakaksali uktau si majunni, ukununga. Miali, inusik, litia, ani, amalo. Mitsi matapatali miutait, ulayo, ilinya vinganu.
Ole pa siya, at Johnny Pihang hangat yung bolito sa fingerak ko. At italatin na, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A die.
Ai ngai, tunga suwitsi, taku chone alang migata, taku kinaikut. Uvanga, ulipa. Ulumi, taku chau kailanga junga, taku nakaksali uktau si majunni, ukununga. Miali, inusik, litia, ani, amalo. Mitsi matali miutei, ulayo, ilinia vinganut, ilinia reasut, huksinilit, mako amalo pingasut, tunga sucheritsi. Hanuipa.
At jolly pure takto.
Aha.
Ta! Missy! Ku! Puki! Gi! Nala! Na! Johnny! Takuy nai!
Jaji.
Hi.
At sakali ka.
Siya, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A die.
Takong nasimiyavut, miali siu tiapiu, takong nakatsali ulautanga. Tunga suchiati lavut, takong nachiaritsi. Hanuipa.
Hanui ka lang ipitiak tugalaw yutin.
Aha.
Kinaovi, Alan. Sulakililin niya vimi hikalikutta. Bayaro talakmi. Kisho ko na rinipake vyo kopet komi. Biro. Kisho mabiro. Acho? Mingo. Ilinya kanilirutta. Ilinya ni kovasini hasulaka. Two. 5. Sulakabi. Inabi? Ito. Sulakali inabi mi. Kikan na ulit ako. Ato? Iso kaya laki. Ato? Sulakabi. Basi ko kaya. Kiso Kuina ni pa-review hubak kumi. Aso ba? Sama. Aso. Susungum mata. Aso. Ilinya kanilirota ilinya ni khas ubasini nga khasiulalika. 5. Sita mo. Kinamut aba buti rumati. Biar tatang luni balo ada anak nang luni. Wah tatang nama anak nang. Kami Malaya. Sulak lili nabi mi hekan na ulika. Acha. Sulak. Kisah koin narini pa review khobak kumi. Worm. Kisah mo worm. Inuk dito. Acho. Ilinya kanilikuta ilinya ni khas kawasin nga khasiulalika. 5. Tabaw ito yung mabi. Kinamo. Acho? Billy and China. Everybody. Sulat ili niya bimi khikalerovi panonia. Giso ko inanakini pa review ubat ko ni. Pare. Sukat tangata. Ang uya kasuba ko sa Ilinia kanilirota iliniani khuvasini khatulaka. 5 4 5 Sama sa ningi yung uyunga. Sula tunga tunga katala tunga. Hekan na ulit tuaka. Kuinan na rin ni pari yaga si vangi yui. Ilinya kanilirota ilinyani khuvasiniga khasiula litu 5 Nakomi samsa.
Takum nasi meyavut, takum naratsaleulartanga, inusik ijitsiak. Taana takuchauri tuakat, liitia aineak takum naratsaleulartanga, takum naneak tavut, inusik pingani takum narituarutta.
Piu juga lah.
Aha.
Anong name?
Hi.
Ayos nga sila siya ngapi urang ngat. Kadjarak tu ngapi nga.
Upang kakapirot to.
Ay tu kapuno ngapi abong nga kata.
Takuya kata.
Tatay mo tuktaka mo na nang name.
Kanwalo kapi kong nanginata. Tikusi kong nanginata.
Hay.
Kusikan niya akong nakalawak to man.
Ang subago?
Kusikan. Ay chicken na lang nga takunya ka siya. Yung season na ka man. Takoy.
Ano na kisimigo?
Kupan makaswala nga kan layo ko.
Aha. Ay takanwala ka tayo ma.
Hay la.
Ay sulin na.
Ay ka sila nga juga la.
Eh?
Abo nga ngayon akira to niya ko kan. Bako na akit siya nga medicine no. Takoy.
Ta ina kisimuti ko mga kata.
Takong nakakapagbago. Ati. Johnny.
Hay?
Takong nalabuhan ilang mga ta. Ati.
Tamiali.
Hai.
Sudah kami.
Una pusikan niya ako tikin ang yaw. Yasi. Akira sa akta kaman.
Nasubun ba kayo nga?
Nasubun na.
At siya sana si Kanga eh.
May ito ka yun na rin. Hidyo bilo. May ito bilo.
Sila ko timi.
Inna, kumangit yung kalwa.
No?
Inna. Akit si Mayo.
Sabi ka dyan.
Ukumain ni.
Ha?
Ukumain ni.
Ya pinakapuno ako anit na kadingan ni.
Ano? Meli.
Ay.
Nasyungan lago?
Ate. Sumakin na.
Sila melo piso.
Akan na mo. Ang yumi, taki yumi. Nanikan na lang ang yumi.
Tanong alam mo ta?
Ate. Palawali lang ako. Palawali kin eh.
Yum. Aha. Ya ko pala martiri nga kaya na kama.
Ya, ako pa naman hangit pa. Tak na mga pula niya nakiti.
Ati.
Pero kaya narak ka.
Ha?
Una. Palawali. Ate.
Ang tamiti yung palo.
Nama kailangan lang ako pa naman kalap.
Takit yun nalakalawak turulay.
Hala, sulit ko puno ako luit.
Kaya ka kailangan si Jokay.
Ako na lang takay kaya kita.
Siyo kanok kaya. Kaya sa kayo ito ang katalon.
Tagad ka sa niya ko nga. Ikaw kaya tayo man ako makakaya ko lang ba?
Ate, ubinggal rin. Tayo ba nasa yung bata?
Tayo ba ito sa...
Ubing...
Upalaw ni nipihangit wakag ta. Kaya ka lang apalay nga Janet, ako pinako pa nawa.
Mama!
Kimating yun na view. Ay.
Kimating pala yan nga.
Ubing nga ako na rin. Ay. Nipihangit ito kay.
Jaji.
Hi.
Jaji, wali ka mali. At saka ka.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Atay.
Takon na si Miyavut. Niningiyok. Takon na katsaliwlaw tanga. Kisumito at siliwlaw ko lang nga. Pinguak-vik. Kisumito inahimi. Khimik. Wik. Kisumituk. Ay, itu nga. Nukakvik. Kisimili. Inali. Iglugalat. Umiyat. Saymatik. Wait. Ito, actually, ukilaw lang Hey, kimutsin mo akto. Kimutsin mo aktut. Kisuk daw minli. Ay, suko si pingwaktut. Pingwaktu apin. Sukusit pingwaktut. Asian iliat chili ukilaw lang Pingasut say matit. Ukuhanak ni muda ko yatira to si kakili. Tema.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Atai.
Takun nasi miyabut, takun nakachali ulak tangat. Takun nasi miyabut, takun nakachali ulak tangit. Mitsi mataliup. Ulayuk, ilinnia vinganut, ilinnia reasut. Huk sinilit. Atau tang makama.
Atilukan ni.
Takun nasi miyabut, takun nakachali ulak tanga. Mitsi matalim miutait. Ulayuk, ilinnia vinganut, ilinnia reasut, huk sinilit, mako amalo pingasut. Haningi?
Puyuge lawatan, pitiak tutin.
Makan dulu. Tunga sulit uang filis kanayo. Ama ubang margam kalut. Ukwatava okasakanak tahun. Ingat di miti matalimu tikikibut iglu ikitualu silabut. Kanito mga hakap tilu. Usak bigina midutigut. Usak bigina midutigut. Ingat di aluy. Dikit alu mata. Miti mataymo. Pilipo si kuni lusit. Fi. Apesu. La. Genesis 7.
Nujan muatai kuat because ya ada mereka teh nun kini naik orang sini semua orang dah
Inuk pun kaya laksa.
Kamu nak hatta baru kamu nak hatta orang tu mana kamu nak hatta orang ni beli orang tu
Ini kata di laos kemarin.
Inuk hatta ini ini nak kalau mah Kaya ini tu ini hatta lagi punya rumah pijak senang itu mah ugai sebut ni semua hatta semua teman semua hatta semua itu kan punya ini semua kalau ya hatta dulu ini udah ugai sebut teman teman atau teman atau tu sebut apa pijak semua ini semua punya cuma namu Allah telah melalui semua orang ingat ini semua punya lakukan kalau ini semua punya cuma semua sebenarnya takut nanti tidak punya punya lakukan semua di sini Akal sama tanda kalau kaya ini hat cuma ini hat kaya ya guys.
Iglumat, igitualo. Kisang na minabot, dabi kipumi, dabi kisabing nga. Naiglumat ko na yualo mana, inyungit mo kanungit po. Katsari dyan ang nagtsata ni kisum, ikinyang ma. Tana siguro sino. Ukang nagilaw mata. Teman na ikilaw. Kuya namin. Ibilo. Mana sila mo kanina. Kanito mga sabi ko na uminago. Bani piwat tuwalo. Sila po kadyang tuwalo. Miti matulis sa kinyak tuwalo na sumina. 15. Kaya sa pinubaya yung naglasing nga. 16. Kikitaza sa kanya to naglasing nga. 18. Nagpangit to sa kanya to naglasing nga. 16. Nagluloyal yung naglasing nga 14. Nagkimadalo ka sa kanagawa sa kanya to naglasing nga 15. Ilino o yung tama. Hakit dito sa kagilaw na lugo. Lugi ko na apat sulaw nito. Ay, ito yung nada asli
Siguro sa kami umatapos sa sa tapu ama kau pemukul 7 squad tapu take warning ama ini juga dengan take 7 squad 7 ama bisa mengirim dengan 5 squad tetap take mahal squad.
ada itu itu kok ada
take sedikit kok di ubah karena cukup mulai kau
Nami tahu tu kau kasih tak bagus sih.
Mana jati uhaw jiro mammat nalakay na lang milabut ilin niya tichi kalaro mammat adjiliw kanagmi.
Teikkoa adjiliw yun ni teikkoa tuyurat taktuapi ikkoa haimat siya hangata igalaami ubbalun ni tabunga igalaami tuwaktiratangin lusiuk adjiliw riyasi hammatto ikkota haimat siya hangan tabbani illumi tuwarutsi ikko hammakko takatsiarlu mga khawsatsiaratarlusi ammatto adjiliw
Hikaktikaswalluku.
adjiliw tihkaktikaswavingaratariali
Ni maluangilluku.
hailla amma takutuangu walla ammatto adjiliwrilgaigutsi 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 atsikaalertu taimiluattariali
Tallumi. Tema nakumi takun nakay nagatsi nukhavitsat nutiki jawri miratta na komiru mayunga tuju ila ngata mitsi matale miutait ulajuk ilinea vinganu ilinea resurapit na komeitaka tapavusi
Mga totok bau tira la mayunga tok bau tite ko adilewa tak adilewa jetin tuju tak tu tak bau tirtaka
tapavusi namasivita wek nakamejaji adilewa nakay nakavinga
nakomek
Taruvit ibvit iqnayaarirumayannivit iqnayartaarunnarayartutit
Wakawakanginapta inuinakta kitakmiut inuit pitutigi akang naktagun kibkak tuigap tatakuninga 4,000 inuitay kanain mata kanada hinane kitakmiut taw yu walu yugut ipaksak paurusi panili okalaktok kadang may tayo na nalaktukon ngok nunabut mik nunakarakupta ilaw na hukin nakpagtugaraw yung tayo ma kanoklikag ka mamaliyong nikot tapos ikaw yung katakugit inuit taparik satkot alalo inuit nunaptingnit kanadamit itkilgalo tamayta ikaw kahukit pakukit, yung magiblugit. Ubagut daw, ilita kayaw yung magapta. Tapos, kupag miutay daw kaplunan, ilita kayaw yung magmata, ubagut daw, ilita kayaw yung kagapta. Inulukango gapta haman inunapting niya. The federal proposals put forward in shaping Canada's future together could mean big changes in relations between Inuit and the government and will have a considerable impact on the everyday lives of ourselves, the Inuit. The proposals which would have the most impact on the Kitakmiut Inuit are those dealing with self-government, recognition of Native peoples as distinct societies within Canada, changes to the Senate, distribution of powers in the Canadian economy. During the past 2 months, we've been trying to deal with these very complex issues to our constituents in a way that ordinary Inuit people would understand. And I mentioned earlier, I choose to do this in English because we do not have the vocabulary for a lot of this terminology. That's how complex it gets. Describing complex legal issues in plain language is always difficult, but it has been even more difficult in this case because of the federal proposals are so vague, and even our constitutional lawyers are not sure exactly what they mean for Inuit. What do they imply? In this short submission, I shall attempt to express our views and concerns on some of the key constitutional issues. On self-government, Canada was first formed as a confederation of 4 provinces out of an agreement between 2 distinct societies, the English and the French. It was not formed, as we say it should have been, out of an agreement between the English, the French, and the various Aboriginal people who were already in Canada. KIA sees the current process as an opportunity for Inuit to form a new partnership with the rest of Canada by persuading the federal and provincial governments to acknowledge that Inuit have always had and will always have the right to govern themselves. We are encouraged that the federal government now accepts a legally enforceable right of self-government. However, we see no reason for a delay in the enforceability of self-government. If it is a right that we have always had, or a pre-existing right, how can it be suspended for 10 years or any other period of time? It is the preference of KIA that our self-government aims are achieved through public government institutions. The government of Nunavut will be a public government, not an ethnic government. Both Inuit and non-Inuit will be able to vote and be members of the government, and the Nunavut government will serve both residents of the new territory. Legally then, the Nunavut government will be much like the present government of the Northwest Territories, but practically speaking, since Inuit will make up 85% of the population of Nunavut, the government will be very much like Inuit self-government, at least in the beginning, and go from there. Under these circumstances, having an inherent right to self-government entrenched in the Constitution might not seem as important to the Inuit of Nunavut as it would be to Aboriginal peoples living in places where they are a minority in the population. These circumstances could change in a number of ways. If the boundary plebiscite were to fail, Inuit would remain a minority in the territorial population. It's also conceivable that perhaps within 10 or 20 years, there would be more non-Inuit living in Nunavut. It's also conceivable that Canada may not be able to honor its commitment to finance a new government. It might try to delay the process. Within Nunavut, it is our preference to establish self-government at the community level through regional public government institutions. We are currently exploring these 2 options. However, we must retain the right to establish exclusive Inuit self-government if changing circumstances dictate that to be our best interest. We must insist on having the inherent right to self-government guaranteed in the Constitution. Our consultations with the Inuit of the Qitakmiut have clearly told us that the choice is Canada. We've no other option. That's the way we choose to go. The concepts of nationhood and absolute sovereignty hold no interest for our people. We want the same things that other Canadians want. Put it simply, our choice is Inuit self-determination within this country we call Canada. Our position then is that the Constitution must grant Inuit an inherent right to self-government. And regarding the Canada Clause and the Distinct Society Clause, the proposed addition of the Canada Clause and the Distinct Society Clause presents two problems for us. The Canada Clause recognizes that Inuit were historically self-governing and that we governed ourselves in the past. It speaks of self-government in the past tense. Our legal advisors tell us that if this interpretation is placed in an interpretive clause in the Constitution, it could lead Canadian courts to conclude that Inuit have no right to govern themselves now or in our future, except in cases where they negotiate self-government agreements within federal or provincial governments. This is not acceptable, and we insist that wording in this clause be changed. The second problem is that the federal proposals say nothing about recognizing Inuit as distinct societies. If there are good reasons for recognizing Quebec as a distinct society, then there are equally good for recognizing Inuit as a distinct society. And I want to go back to Ken Hughes' words earlier that shouldn't be outside for more than 30 seconds. We've been outside for how many thousands of years and we're still here. The rationale for recognition of Quebec as a distinct society is based on their distinct language, their culture, and their laws. We have traditional law, our languages to protect, and our culture to protect. We recognize that the Constitution recognizes, we request that the Constitution recognize Inuit as a distinct society, and that we have that inherent right to self-government. Regarding Senate reform, KIA is very interested in this proposal. Today we have one senator and 2 MPs from the Northwest Territories representing our interests. The thought of having our own Inuit senators is very powerful. Whether it becomes a reality is a different question. That's why we're here. So KIA supports the federal proposals for Senate reform in principle, but we have our own questions as well. And I think those are pretty basic questions that we are asking, such as how many Aboriginal seats would there be? What kinds of powers? How would they be elected and by whom? How many senators would there be for the Northwest Territories or the Nunavut Territory? The federal proposals from 18 to 26 suggest various transfers of or lending of federal powers to provincial jurisdictions. These proposed transfers of power are of great concern to KIA. The federal government has a legal obligation to provide certain services to Inuit in many areas. The federal proposals acknowledge this obligation to Inuit but at the same time, Ottawa is proposing to give away some of its current powers to the provinces, including those such as manpower, training, tourism, mining, recreation. The federal government has made many mistakes over the years in dealing with the Inuit, but we believe it still takes its obligation to Inuit seriously. KIA does not want Ottawa to transfer too much power to the provinces before self-government agreements are concluded. We fear that the provinces will not be eager to give up newly acquired powers to future local, regional, or Inuit governments. The current economic and social position of Inuit is such that we stand to benefit from a stronger federal government than a weaker one. Vote Liberal. Inuit residents of the Qitukmut rely heavily on national social programs such as Medicare. Any weakening of federal spending power will weaken the ability to maintain national programs. Transfers of legislative powers could have an effect of reducing the fiduciary obligation of the federal government to Inuit, as set out in Section 91, subsection 24 of the Constitution. Additionally, such transfers of powers could result in increasing application of federal or provincial laws to Aboriginal peoples. KIA believes that the proposed transfers of federal powers must be conditional on Inuit consultation and consent, where such transfers may affect Inuit directly. We insist on the provision of constitutional guarantees for consultation and joint decision-making among all levels of government and the Inuit leaders. Some economic concerns. Federal government is proposing to establish several new agencies to better the economy, which could have great impact on our people. And one of those would be the so-called Council of the Federation. It would be made up of federal, provincial, and territorial government representatives who would vote on important national economic issues such as tax policies, etc., healthcare, and welfare. To improve national economic efficiency, the federal government has also proposed a new common market or free trade clause to remove all barriers of movement of people, goods, services, and money within Canada, except where those barriers are in the national interest or needed to promote economic equality among regions. In practical terms, what this means for Inuit is that the common market clause might make it more difficult for Inuit governments to make policies which give preference to Inuit workers or businesses, like those mentioned in the Nunavut Final Agreement. In the past, Ottawa and the provinces have rarely consulted Aboriginal people when making major decisions. Inuit, for example, have not had representation at First Ministers' meetings on the economy, nor have Inuit been invited to attend ministerial meetings on finance, manpower training, or other major topics. Inuit have argued that all constitutional issues affect us, but certainly issues like jobs, receiving a salary, training, international trade affect us, and usually in a way that is different from the majority of Canadians, because Inuit economies are very different from that of southern Canada. We intend to demand that Inuit are involved in all national decision-making bodies through the participation of our organizations, the Inuit Taparigsat of Canada, namely. This would include a guaranteed seat at First Ministers' conferences. So to conclude, we appreciate this opportunity to be involved, to present our views, and also to lend support to our fellow Inuit across the North and the various organizations. We share the views of our national president that Canada must correct the exclusion of Inuit from power sharing and decision making at the constitutional level and other levels of government. KIA fully supports the constitutional initiatives taken at the national level by ITC. The recognition of Inuit as a distinct society in the Constitution would facilitate the preservation and protection of our language, our culture, our society at all levels. Similarly, the entrenchment of the right to self-government may assist Inuit in the Khitakmiut in achieving an effective form of community or regional self-government. Taima okawang nerak ko nga Inuit apakoy man nakmata. Kay nabi.
Kaya namin nakalog ka etna. Maybe at this moment we can give an opportunity for James Ituluk, President of KIA, if you want to expand on any of these issues, since we have some time for your presentation. Sure. Adi.
Teme, Chusha Jutisi, Atoria Halangachi, Inuk did Ohamna Mahayanak.
Yes, number one.
Teme la Pekoyak Economic Ilangi is Makatao Tilita, Tabanakito Muni, Pilo Actemic, Isimayetinik, House Harving Nartunga. Akso hataw si manariyatinig lo pekoyak diwa iloani singmat Inuit ilaw yuk sa mga ata o kausaratak sa mayatinig tamanino nibut man sakip paliat wi nahulung asi wali ako nago adjiriyaw nginibut lo taguk sa utiyar lo tayo man ilang yuti yumat sa inakalawat pekoyak diwa kanataw pekoyak diwa kanakang atiloani kuya naksima yawluang nibut kanatimi utaw luta amaluta mani kartibini luta isu akalo hatingin natigo tayo man naimat ilaw yumat siyak tugut kanok kanata awla taksaw niya mga so kaima nung nakakatawat kanataw iloani take distinct society o siya ulak tilugo pilo academic ilitarayaw na ako mamakitigot so kaya matamanit ito ka magalawat kinatuin na tamaw nga lak tindago tamanit ito kawat so lo tamaw nga lak tilugo sibulak pa ako dawat tamak ko ila okay tamanit ito kawatibot aboriginals ng katibot ikayok to chalo at tigo tamat sing Takuy economic distinct society tayo man name ikayok ila jo ko maniak tigot kanataw awla taw ni ngani isak si makataw lo ta kanatuin nak tamakolo sanat iksi makataw lo tik Inuit tamak ila inutinaw ito nik aboriginals takwa ilaw yaka hamay niak kanata awla taw na suwaktilog kuya namin
Itulog kawin mo na po ICCI may katimayuyot Chesley Anderson, I take our presentation to Sakarop sa apere kataw tera katajang makipuse. Perhaps we can take questions from ladies and gentlemen. John?
As you know, the federal government proposal has a provision that says that Aboriginal self-government institutions should be subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And as you probably know, there's a debate in southern Canada right now between Aboriginal women and their chiefs on this issue because of the history of male-dominated society. I was just wondering if you had any views on this question.
Yeah. To answer that, I'm going to present my own view as Edna. Not on behalf of KIA. I don't think that debate is perhaps only in southern Canada. Inuit women have been struggling as well for equality and representation, in voicing our opinions. And I've been stressing, and I can't stress enough, that let's not just listen, but act and get the woman involved right from the onset of this implementation of our claim, in the creation of this new government, and continue to make history, perhaps, by saying that Inuit women will be respected by their male counterparts, that they will be equal partners.
Edna, I want to thank you for a very excellent brief that you presented on behalf of KIA. You talk about, just for the benefit of the people watching, I think it's probably appropriate to give a clear picture of what exactly constitutes KIA in the whole scheme of Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, as well as the Eastern Nunavut Territory. How many communities does KIA represent? You say 4,000 people.
There are 6, according to government, there are 6 established communities, but to us there are 8. 2 are like large outpost camps where people have selected to live traditionally on the land and away from major centers or communities, so there's 8.
You talked about the inherent right to self-government being entrenched, and you stressed that numerous times. You have, the Inuit have achieved a major agreement, the Nunavut Agreement, but you have various components. You have, I believe, in the Delta region, you have the Inuvialuit, who have their own agreement, and there is some talk about a regional type of government. I'm wondering if the KIA's had consultations on these various options, because I don't know whether it would mean the same thing, how does regional type government fit in with the whole Nunavut government, Nunavut government or Nunavut Territories framework?
Okay. James is going to answer that.
I'll try and answer that that question. As you know, through our land claims agreement, article number 4 dealing with the Nunavut political development. And there's a meeting going on right now here in Iqaluit, the northern leaders dealing with the future Nunavut government. And we are talking about what sort of government we'll be dealing with when the Nunavut divided. I mean, when Nunavut created. We have options, what type of government that we will be looking at for the Nunavut, and there's whether we can adopt the present system of a territorial government, or we can heavily rely on regional governments or stronger community governments. And when we create the Nunavut, we're talking about the Inuit will be a majority. So we sort of looking at tying the self-government into the Nunavut government, and since the Inuit will be a majority, at least in the beginning, so we see that as a sort of a self-government type in Nunavut area, and I guess we're still yet to decide what kind of system government we'll have in Nunavut area. We're looking at either stronger community governments, or decentralized government, or centralized government. Those are the options that are being talked about at the meeting right now that is going on here in Iqaluit.
I think furthermore, there are 3 points that you made that I think, well, you made many excellent points, because sometimes we have problems getting our presenters to focus on the 28 proposals, and you've done that very comprehensively and very clearly. I think there are a number of points that arise that are very contentious. One is the enforceability within 10 years. And I think it bears repeating that you indicated that if it is a right that we have always had, or a pre-existing right, how can it be suspended for 10 years or any other period of time? I think that's so aptly put, it bears repeating. The other, the other one is that, and I'm just going to go to it, is because we have this question all over Canada that we put to the Native groups, because it's one that's fairly contentious, and that is the existing the relationship that would exist between the federal government or Canadian Confederation and the various forms of, or the various regimes of self-government once it's entrenched. And you say there, we want the same things that other Canadians want. Put simply, our choice is Inuit self-determination within Canada. Our position is that then the Constitution must grant Inuit an inherent right to self-government within Canada. So we won't put that question to you, but to recognize that you've answered it very adequately. And the other one was on the division of powers. I can't stress enough that I too have concerns, and you've expressed that very well in terms of how you would have the opportunity to eventually negotiate various jurisdictions. What would be left for you to negotiate if in fact you've already depleted that source of power to such an extent? So I just want to make those comments, and thank you for your presentation.
Willie would like to speak.
Thank you very much. I too want to thank you, witnesses, for the presentation. I want to ask 4 questions, if I may, and they're all on page 6 of your brief. What are your responses to those questions? Because one of our mandates was to, as a committee, to try and seek out opinion from the Aboriginal community about specifics like Senate reform, and those 4 that you ask, I would be interested in your responses to those 4 yourself. What are your views with respect to the number of seats, for example, that Inuits should have, and what kind of powers the senators should have? I'm wondering if you might want to address those 4 questions.
Yeah, okay. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. I think when we the questions we are asking, you know, I think we need further explanation from the federal government. How many seats that Aboriginal people will be allowed to have in the Senate, and I think well, what we sort of asking is we want the equal representation on the